A Russian soldier who had reportedly been hiding for about 6 months in abandoned buildings after the liberation of the Kharkiv region has been arrested by Ukrainian police. The soldier, a 42-year-old serviceman from the 27th Russian Separate Guards Motor Rifle Brigade, was taken into custody on Monday as regional police officers patrolled villages in the Kupiansk-Vazlovia area. After he was searched, it turned out that the man, who is from the Moscow region, was a serviceman of the 27th Separate Guards Motor Rifle Brigade of the Russian Federation, the police said in a statement. The detainee claimed he had been hiding since the liberation of the Kupiansk district by Ukraine's armed forces. The man, dressed in civilian clothes, was apparently separated from his unit as they fled the Ukrainian counteroffensive last September. It is still unclear how he had managed to hide for the 6 months since the Russian retreat. Ukrainian police have not released further details at the moment, and The Guardian cannot independently verify the claims. The Russian Ministry of Defense has not yet commented on the information. Ukraine's surprise counterattack in the Kharkiv region last September came as Russian forces also faced attacks in the south. In the space of a few days, Ukraine pushed the Russians out from more than 6,000 square kilometers of territory and consolidated its control of the Kharkiv region, raising flags on towns and villages which had been occupied by Russian troops for 6 months, and reclaiming areas seized by Moscow on the first day of Vladimir Putin's invasion. The Russian military appears to have begun employing what is believed to be its own version of the US-made Joint Direct Attack Munitions, DAMs, in the eastern Ukrainian region of Donbass, according to reports from the battlefield. The pro-Russian fighter-bomber Telegram channel posted a video, a compilation of multiple clips showing the reported use of a FAB-500M62 bomb, believed to be equipped with an aerial guidance kit called Model Planirovania I Correctsi, MPK, or Gliding and Correction Module. The Russian Ministry of Defense, RUMOD, has not yet officially commented on the alleged use of these aerial guidance kits. However, Russian media outlets have reported that dumb bombs equipped with these kits have begun to be used in the Avdiivka region. Also, a Russian media outlet called Military Review shared images of an unexploded FAB-500 aerial bomb found on one of the streets of the Kuibishevsky district of Donetsk. Interestingly, only 500 meters from this bomb, what seems to be an aerial guidance kit, was also found, according to Military Review. The wings are also clearly visible in the photographs of the product, debris, Military Review noted. In early January, an image surfaced online, also shared by the fighter-bomber channel on Telegram, of what appeared to be a FAB-500M62 bomb with a mysterious wing kit attached to it, reportedly loaded onto a Russian Su-34 fullback combat jet. At the time, netizens compared the munitions seen in the image with the U.S. Joint Direct Attack Munition, JDAM, family of precision-guided bombs, which the U.S. has provided to the Ukrainian Air Force. Reports of alleged Russian use of FAB-500M62 bomb equipped with aerial guidance kit began shortly after the Ukrainian military reportedly began using the U.S.-supplied JDAM bomb on Russian-held positions in the Bakhmut region. Dramatic new video set to the tune featured in Pulp Fiction shows the moment a Kiev kamikaze-style drone stalks a Russian tank as it struggles in vain to outrun the unmanned aircraft. Aerial footage shot from the suicide drone's point of view, and released by Ukraine's security service, shows the armed aircraft zeroing in on a Russian tank, identified as T-80BV, racing along a desolate road in the Kharkiv region. The remotely operated drone pivots in the air and begins pursuing its target in the recording set to the jaunty tune of Dick Dale and the Deltones' 1963 hit Misirlau, made popular by Quentin Tarantino's cult classic Pulp Fiction. As the chase heats up, the drone descends to an altitude of just a few dozen feet above the ground, flying almost directly above the fleeing tank. Moments later, the screen fills with static and goes black, indicating an apparent strike. The security service said in a tweet Saturday that its special agents destroyed another tank of the occupiers with a kamikaze drone. The Russians tried to escape, but they weren't very successful. And we will continue to destroy the invaders until complete victory. Moscow is baffled by Ottawa's stated aim of changing the Russian government, Russian ambassador to Canada Oleg Stepanov said in a statement on Monday. Quite perplexed to hear from Canadian Foreign Minister Melanie Joly that her goal is regime change in Russia. Is it how she instructs embassy in Moscow? Stepanov said via Twitter. And by the way, what reaction would we expect if, for example, someone in Moscow had said that Russia's goal is regime change in Ottawa. Joly said during the press briefing on Friday that Russia should be isolated economically and politically and how much we're seeing potential regime change in Russia. Russia launched a military operation in Ukraine on February 24, 2022, responding to requests by the breakaway Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics to defend them from intensifying attacks by Ukrainian troops. The countries of the collective West, including Canada, have imposed comprehensive sanctions against Russia and provided military support to Ukraine. The Canadian government banned imports of Russian steel and aluminum products, Global Affairs Canada said in a statement on Friday. Americans' views of Russia have reached their most negative levels in more than 3 decades as the war in Ukraine shows no signs of ending after just over 1 year, according to the latest Gallup poll. Russia's favorability among U.S. respondents stood at 9% in early 2023, down from 15% last year. 90% of Americans held an unfavorable opinion of Russia, 59% of whom said they had a very unfavorable view. Gallup called the results easily the worst ratings held by Russia in at least 34 years, when the pollster first measured the favorability of the Soviet Union in 1989. Russia joins Iran, Iraq and North Korea as the 4th country with a sub-10% favorability rating among Americans, Gallup said. By contrast, Ukraine's favorability among U.S. respondents reached its highest peak since 2005, climbing to 68% from 62% last year. Very favorable opinions of Ukraine more than doubled to 23% from 9% over the same period, Gallup said. A 56% majority of Americans described Russia's invasion of Ukraine as a critical threat to U.S. vital interests, up 4 points from 2022. Another 51% held the same view of Russia's military power, down 8 points from last year but still among the highest that Gallup has measured since 2004. The decline may be related to the prolonged battle with Ukraine, Gallup said Monday. Many military experts thought the Russian military would overwhelm Ukraine, but it has made gains only in limited parts of the country. Those gains have come at a heavy cost in Russian military personnel and equipment. Gallup carried out telephone interviews between February 1 to 23 among 1,008 adults in all 50 U.S. states. When the Russian leader launched a full-scale invasion of neighboring Ukraine last February, the Kremlin hoped to seize the capital Kyiv in a matter of days. More than a year on, there appears to be no end in sight. As Russia continues with its push to seize the eastern Donbas region in its entirety, Ukraine is expected to launch a fresh counteroffensive against Russian forces in the coming months. Russian President Vladimir Putin may be forced out of power should Russia be defeated in his war against Ukraine, Newsweek has been told. On Monday, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov suggested that Russia's chances of victory in Ukraine are narrowing, saying that the Russian leader's war goals can now only be achieved by military means, not through peace talks. Should Putin be unable to win the war on his preferred terms, he may eventually be forced to step down as Russian leader. Boris Bondarev, a former Russian diplomat who resigned publicly over the invasion of Ukraine last year, told Newsweek. Putin can be replaced. He's not a superhero. He doesn't have any superpowers. He's just an ordinary dictator, said Bondarev, 42, who quit his job as an arms control expert at Russia's diplomatic mission to Geneva in May 2022, and is the only Russian diplomat to have quit publicly over the war. And we have, if we look at history, we see that such dictators have been replaced from time to time. So usually, if they lose the war, and they could not satisfy the needs of the supporters, they usually went away, he said. Bondarev believes that if Russians understand that the war is lost, and Putin has nothing to offer them in exchange, there will be disappointment and disagreement. They might think they don't need Putin anymore, he said. I think that once they say farewell to the delusions, and find themselves in a new reality where Putin cannot deliver anything, only fear and some kind of threat of repression against his own people, that will change the situation. Independent investigations are needed to bring the truth of the Nord Stream explosions to light, Adrian Welsh, General Secretary of the Communist Party of Quebec said on Sunday, adding the United States remains highly likely behind the incident due to its pursuit of political interests. In late September 2022, the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines, which were carrying Russian gas to Germany, exploded in the waters off Sweden and Denmark. The incident was widely believed as sabotage to the major infrastructure. In an article published on U.Sportal's Substack early last month, former Pulitzer Prize winner Seymour Hersh claimed that U.S. divers had installed explosives under the Nord Stream pipelines during the NATO Baltic operations military exercise last June before detonating them 3 months later. The U.S. and Russia have long been fighting over energy, with the former attempting to increase European countries' dependence on expensive U.S. energy since the Russia-Ukraine crisis, Welsh told China Central Television, CCTV. Destroying the Nord Stream pipelines is in the interest of the U.S. at the cost of European people, Welsh highlighted. I think that the more it goes, the more evidence we have that it is indeed the United States that are behind this act of sabotage of the Nord Stream pipelines. Economic interests of oil and gas corporations from the West, these are interests that are being suited by this act of sabotage. It's a way to basically accelerate the dependency of the whole European continent towards the U.S., he said. Denmark, Germany and Sweden launched their own investigations into the incident, but 5 months later, they still have not identified all the details of the incident and who is the culprit behind. The international community should run independent and transparent investigations on this case, as the U.S. could turn the investigation into another whitewashing operation, Welsh stressed. The agreement to provide some of the United States' most sensitive military technology was announced as President Joe Biden hosted a summit in San Diego of the AUKUS trilateral security partnership between Australia, the United Kingdom and the United States. Standing with the other leaders after the meeting at a U.S. naval base, Albanese said a new chapter has begun in the three-way relationship built on the country's shared values, commitment to democracy and vision for a peaceful future. Thanking the United States for sharing its nuclear propulsion technology for the first time in 65 years, he said the agreement represents the biggest single investment in Australia's defense capability in all of our history. Biden emphasized that the nuclear-powered submarines will not have any nuclear weapons of any kind. Starting early in the next decade, the United States, after securing congressional approval, plans to sell 3 Virginia-class submarines to Australia, which will have the option of acquiring 2 more. Biden said the 3 countries' plan is a testament to the strength of the long-standing ties that unite us and to our shared commitment of ensuring the Indo-Pacific remains free and open, prosperous and secure. Sunak, who vowed to increase Britain's defense spending earlier in the day, said the challenges posed by countries such as China, North Korea and Russia have only grown since the trilateral framework was established. This is a powerful partnership. For the first time ever, it will mean 3 fleets of submarines working together across both the Atlantic and Pacific, keeping our oceans free, open and prosperous for decades to come, Sunak said. The new security partnership was announced in September 2021 to pave the way for the purchase as well as eventual collaboration on the development of a new type of submarine, called AUKUS. In the first stage of the project, the United States and Britain will train Australian officers and engineers on how to operate nuclear-powered submarines. Using technology from the 3 countries, Australia and the United Kingdom will begin work on building AUKUS units in their shipyards within the decade, according to the statement. It said Australia and Britain will deploy the new vessels as their submarines of the future. After Australia's acquisition of the vessels from the United States, the 3rd phase of producing the new version will kick in, with Britain scheduled to deliver its first AUKUS to the Royal Navy in the late 2030s. Australia's first such delivery to its Navy is expected in the early 2040s. In Tokyo on Tuesday, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida told Albanese over the phone that Japan supports the steps taken by AUKUS, as they contribute to regional peace and stability amid an increasingly severe security environment in the Indo-Pacific region. President Yoon Suk-yeol and Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida will talk about ways to normalize the bilateral relationship, including through the implementation of Seoul's solution to the issue of wartime forced labor, during their summit in Tokyo this week, his office said Tuesday. Yoon and Kishida will meet Thursday on the first day of the South Korean president's 2-day working visit to Japan, National Security Advisor Kim Sung-han told reporters. The summit will be followed by a dinner. The 2 leaders will discuss normalization measures for the overall South Korea-Japan relationship, including the implementation of the solution to the issue of the forced labor ruling, Kim said during a press briefing at the presidential office. I also believe there will be an opportunity to talk about ways to resolve the policy barriers hampering economic cooperation and about deepening the economic cooperation between the two countries, he said. Yoon will begin his trip by meeting with Korean residents over lunch. It will be his first visit to Japan since taking office and the first by a South Korean president in nearly 4 years. On Friday, Yoon plans to meet with members of the Korea-Japan Parliamentarians Union and the Korea-Japan Cooperation Committee, hold a business roundtable over lunch with key business leaders from both countries, and speak to Japanese and South Korean college students at Keio University. Relations between the neighboring countries frayed badly after South Korea's Supreme Court ordered 2 Japanese firms in 2018, Nippon Steel and Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, to compensate Korean victims of forced labor during World War II. The Korean peninsula was under Japan's colonial rule from 1910 to 45. Japan has long insisted that all reparations stemming from its colonial rule were settled under a 1965 treaty that normalized bilateral ties. Yoon and Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida each took a significant political risk by opening a new chapter in their country's relations. But they did it because they believe that the global strategic environment is changing fast and that China's expansion poses a challenge neither can deal with alone. Yoon made the first move by pledging that South Korean funds will be used to compensate World War II victims of Japan's forced labor practices, thereby removing a major hurdle that had frozen Tokyo-Seoul collaboration. He said last week that Japan had transformed from a militaristic aggressor of the past into a partner that shares the same universal values with us. Kishida responded last week by praising Yoon's actions and pledging to deepen ties with Seoul. This sets the stage for Japan to resume cooperation on everything from intelligence sharing to supply chains. Kishida might also invite Yoon to the Group of 7 leaders meeting in May in Hiroshima. In April, President Biden will host Yoon for a state dinner. Taiwan showcased new models of its domestically produced military drones on Tuesday, saying they are key to its asymmetric warfare capacity to make its forces more agile if they have to face a far larger Chinese military. China, which has never renounced the use of force to bring Taiwan under its control, has ramped up military activity near the democratically governed island to force it to accept Chinese sovereignty despite Taiwan's objections. The war in Ukraine has lent new urgency to Taiwan military's efforts to bolster defense, including a push to develop drones in a rare display of its drone capabilities. The military-owned National Chung-Shan Institute of Science and Technology, NCSIST, showed off its latest models, including the Albatros 2 surveillance drone and combat drones that operate with Global Positioning Systems satellites. NCSIST head Art Chong said the war in Ukraine had focused attention on drones, and his institution had teamed up with Taiwan companies to build a national team to develop military drones. Taiwan's military has announced a partnership with companies aimed at producing 3,000 drones next year. Chi Li-pin, director of Aeronautical Systems Research Division for NCSIST, said the armed forces should increase their adoption of drones in their strategies. I hope our national troops can familiarize themselves with this weapon of asymmetric warfare and use them boldly, he told reporters at an NCSIST facility in the central city of Taichung. President Tsai Ing-wen has championed the idea of asymmetric warfare to make Taiwan's forces more mobile and harder to attack. Taiwan's armed forces are well equipped but still dwarfed by China's. The island's defense ministry said in a report to Parliament this week, a copy of which was reviewed by Reuters, that China was quickly building up its combat capacity with drones, including swarms of flying robots. In response, Taiwan will focus on developing its combat and surveillance drones, as well as anti-drone systems, the ministry said. Taiwan's domestic submarine program faces many difficulties but is going according to plan, Defense Minister Chiu Kuo-cheng said on Tuesday after Reuters reported a sharp increase in British exports of submarine parts to the island. Taiwan has engaged an array of foreign submarine technology vendors for its new fleet, with the approval of their governments, as it seeks to bolster its defenses in the face of a rising military threat from China, which views the island as its own territory. Asked about the Reuters report on the rise in British parts and technology sales to Taiwan, Chiu said the submarine program was very important work. There are indeed many difficulties. At present, everything is going according to plan, he told reporters at Parliament, declining direct comment on the story. We're working hard on this major construction. Taiwan has for decades been unable to buy conventional submarines from other countries because of their concerns about angering China. Military tensions between Beijing and Taipei are at their highest point in decades as China tries to force Taiwan into accepting Chinese rule. Taiwan's democratically elected government strongly rejects China's sovereignty claims, saying only the island's people can decide their future. The German armed forces are suffering from a severe lack of everything, from weapons to fitting helms, their parliamentary commissioner said on Monday. Eva Hogel, who represents the Bundeswehr in parliament, told NTV broadcaster that she will highlight these shortfalls in an annual report that she will lay before parliament on Tuesday. The Bundeswehr lacks everything, from personal items, such as personal equipment, small devices, night vision equipment, radios, to larger devices. Our soldiers have to deal with shortages daily. This is hindering education and training, she warned. Hogel criticized the government for being too slow on backfilling gaps left in armaments by handovers to Ukraine. Hardly any of the €100 billion, $107 billion, promised by the government has been paid toward the purchase of munitions, she said. The commissioner also complained about a general state of disrepair in the military infrastructure, starting with the barracks. She praised Defense Minister Boris Pistorius for admitting that the troops, in their current state, were not capable of defending anyone. China will reopen its borders to foreign tourists for the first time in the 3 years since the COVID-19 pandemic erupted by allowing all categories of visas to be issued from Wednesday. The removal of this last cross-border control measure imposed to guard against COVID-19 comes after authorities last month declared victory over the virus. Tourist industry insiders do not expect a massive influx of visitors in the short run or significant boost to the economy. In 2019, international tourism receipts accounted for just 0.9% of China's gross domestic product. But the resumption of visa issuance for tourists marks a broader push by Beijing to normalize two-way travel between China and the world, having withdrawn its advisory to citizens against foreign travel in January. Areas in China that required no visas before the pandemic will revert to visa-free entry, the foreign ministry said on Tuesday. This will include the southern tourist island of Hainan, a longtime favorite destination among Russians, as well as cruise ships passing through Shanghai port. Visa-free entry for foreigners from Hong Kong and Macau to China's most prosperous province, Guangdong, will also resume, a boon particularly to high-end hotels popular among international business travelers. The Biden administration is approving a scaled-back version of ConocoPhillips' $7 billion oil and gas drilling Willow project in Alaska, the U.S. Department of Interior said on Monday, March 13, drawing cheers from Alaskan officials and the oil industry but criticism from environmental advocates. The decision follows an aggressive 11th-hour campaign from opponents who argued that the development of the 3 drill sites in northwestern Alaska conflicts with President Joe Biden's highly publicized efforts to fight climate change and shift to cleaner energy sources. We don't have time to compromise when it comes to addressing the climate crisis. Biden can't have his cake and eat it, too, when it comes to handling what is an existential crisis. And, he claims to care not only about the climate crisis but also about addressing environmental justice and addressing the extinction crisis, and yet this project will exacerbate all 3 of those crises. And it's infuriating to see the Biden administration approve this project, said Kristen Monsell, a senior attorney at the Center for Biological Diversity, an environmental group. Alaska's elected officials say the project will create hundreds of jobs and bring billions of dollars in revenue to state and federal coffers. The state relies heavily on revenue from oil production, but output there has declined dramatically from its peak in the 1980s. I feel the people of Alaska have been heard, U.S. Representative Mary Peltola, a Democrat from Alaska, said on a call with reporters. The state of Alaska cannot carry the burden of solving our global warming issues alone. The project's fate has been closely watched as Biden seeks to balance his goals of decarbonizing the U.S. economy and restoring U.S. leadership on climate change while also increasing domestic fuel supplies to keep prices low. The Interior Department approved the project with 3 drill pads after saying last month it was concerned about the greenhouse gas impacts of Willow. The administration also announced late on Sunday, March 12, sweeping new protections for undisturbed Alaskan lands and waters. Environmental groups, however, criticized the Biden administration, saying it was trying to have it both ways on climate change and have said they would challenge Willow in court. 25 migrants who traveled in a minibus on highway between Sofia and Pernik were detained by Bulgarian police on Monday, March 13, Interior Minister said. This arrest has been controlled, it didn't happen by accident at the place where they have been detained, Ivan Demirdziv told reporters, adding additional checkpoints have been set up to stop and check vehicles. Local media reported the arrested migrants came from Afghanistan. 2 weeks ago, Bulgarian prosecutors charged 6 people with human trafficking after 18 Afghan migrants were found dead inside a truck dumped on a dirt road near Sofia. The deaths have shocked Bulgaria, in what is one of the worst incidents of its kind on the overland route across the Balkans into Europe. Thousands of people fleeing war and poverty in the Middle East, Africa and Asia make the journey, and Bulgaria has been trying to cope with an increased inflow of migrants from neighboring Turkey in the past year. Colombia's Navy on Saturday, March 11, released a video of its officers seizing a shipment of drugs on board of semi-submersible sea vessel. 2.6 tons of cocaine chlorohydrate were seized during the operation, officials reported. Authorities said that during the inspection of the vessel, they also found bodies of 2 dead people along with the drug shipment, as well as 2 people in poor health condition due to inhalation of toxic fumes from the fuel. The semi-submersible vehicle, the rescued people, the bodies, and the shipment were escorted by the Navy to a port at Tumaca in southwestern Colombia, near the border with Ecuador. Navy officials said the shipment of drugs was headed to Central America. U.S. President Joe Biden has pledged to do whatever it takes to contain the fallout from a pair of banking collapses. He is working to restore confidence after the failure of Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank. Biden said, "Americans can rest assured that our banking system is safe. Your deposits are safe. Let me also assure you, we will not stop at this, we will do whatever is needed." Biden made the remarks shortly before the markets opened on Monday. He called on lawmakers and regulators to strengthen rules to make collapses less likely to happen again. He also promised taxpayers that none of their money would be used in the bailouts and said the bank's managers will be fired. Regulators had previously announced emergency measures to protect all deposits at the banks rather than the standard limit of $250,000. They said depositors will have access to all of their money from Monday. One depositor visiting Signature Bank said, "They said not to worry, they'll honor all outstanding checks, they're gonna honor all future checks. And they put me at ease." However, investors on Wall Street worry that the fallout could spread. In trading Monday, they saw stocks of some regional banks plummet. Meanwhile, former President Donald Trump recently commented on the bankruptcy of a series of large banks in the U.S. The total capitalization of the collapsed banks is estimated at $500 billion. In his latest statement, Trump affirmed that U.S. President Joe Biden will remain in American history as the second Herbert Hoover. Herbert Hoover, former U.S. president and the man who led the U.S. in the Great Depression of 1929. Trump said, "Based on what is happening with our economy, we can say that Joe Biden is a modern-day Herbert Hoover. And we are getting closer and closer to the Great Recession, which will be much worse than 1929. There are signs of this as a number of banks have gone bankrupt shortly." After President Biden's speech, the share prices of European banks went down. Switzerland's largest bank immediately lost 11% of its capitalization, the largest drop in stock prices in the bank's history. Germany's Jennifer Marotzen announced her retirement from international football on Monday, March 13. The announcement comes just 4 months ahead of the Women's World Cup, which will take place in New Zealand and Australia from July 20. Marotzen won the 2013 European Championships and scored in the 2016 Olympic final to secure the gold medal for Germany. Those medals add to her 5 Champions League titles, 4 with her current club Olympique Lyonnais and 1 with FFC Frankfurt. The 30-year-old midfielder, who made her international debut in October 2010, scored 33 goals for her country in a 13-year international career. Marotzen said she is retiring due to an anterior cruciate ligament injury that she suffered while playing for Germany against Serbia in a World Cup qualifier in April 2022. "Because of my serious knee injury in spring 2022, I realized that it felt right to retire from the national team," Marotzen said in a statement. Missing the European Championships in England was one of many signs. I remember well how I was at the 2011 World Cup, when I was also injured, didn't even want to watch a game. Now I was the girl's biggest fan on TV, without it hurting not to be there. Maratson will play her 112th and last match for her country on April 11 against Brazil. Jordan's King Abdullah and his wife Queen Rania's eldest daughter Princess Iman on Sunday married a New York-based financier from a prominent Greek family in a private ceremony attended by some Gulf royals and family friends. The princess, 26, and the groom Jamil Alexander Thermiotis, 28, both read a verse from the Quran after signing the marriage document in front of the monarch in parts of the ceremony shown live on state television. Earlier Princess Iman, wearing a white dress with a long train and lace-cuffed sleeves with a diamond tiara, was escorted through the palace gardens by Crown Prince Hussein bin Abdullah, her eldest brother. Congratulations my dearest Iman, your smile has always been a gift of love that I've cherished since the day you were born. I wish you and Jamil a life filled with love and laughter, her mother Queen Rania posted on social media. The engagement of Iman to Thermiotis, who was born in Caracas, Venezuela, into a Greek family, had been announced last summer, but the date of the marriage was set only last week. King Abdullah's eldest son Crown Prince Hussein is set to marry Rajwa Al Saif, the youngest daughter of Saudi businessman Khaled Al Saif on June 1. The Hashemite ruling monarchy enjoys solid support in a kingdom that has escaped relatively unscathed the upheaval that has swept the Middle East.